Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and joining me today is my co-host, Mads Christensen.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me on your Toolbox again, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, Mads is here, I'm here, which means it's time for another deep dive into what's new with Visual Studio. This time we're talking about 16.10 GA, which has been released as of last week, I believe, right? During build.
That's right.
So if you haven't downloaded that version of Visual Studio yet, or you haven't updated, definitely do so. And feel free to follow along with us as we check out some cool new features that are available in 16.10. So you can go download it at visualstudio.com/download. Pretty simple. Or just hit update on your installer if you already have it. And yeah, do you have any? Oh, and also if you want to see a written out version of all the different features, be sure to check out the blog post about 16.10 that we'll share the link for in the chat.
Yep. And I'm actually very excited for 16.10 because I've been using the preview version of Visual Studio for quite a while. Actually, I've been using the internal build, so I've been using it for even longer. And there are some fantastic things in there. So I'm actually very excited to share with all the viewers here all the good stuff that we got for you.
Yep, I am as well. I think it's going to be good stuff. So we have several members from the Visual Studio team joining us today for a little show and tell. And as always, feel free to ask whatever questions are on your mind about Visual Studio or any of the features that we're going to show off today. And we're all ears.
Yep. So if you're watching this live, do it in the live chat. And if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, use the comments below.
Yep. Alrighty. So let's just jump in. So first up, we're going to be talking about what's new with Roslyn in 16.10. So joining us is Andrew Hall and Mika Dumont from the .NET team.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
How's it going? Good.
It's pretty good. It's a little hot here, but otherwise good.
Yeah, the weather's getting super good around here, at least on the West Coast anyway. Yeah, so I can't wait. Like after this, I'm probably just going to go for a walk outside. All right.
Yeah,
so
sounds good. Cool. Yeah.
So what do you have for us?
Let's get started. Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Cool. So yeah, we have a ton of new features that we recently added in the .NET productivity space, in the Roslyn space. And the very first feature that I'm most excited about is the new inheritance margin icons. So these icons over here, this gives you a visual representation for your code's implementations and overrides. And so if you go ahead and click on them, you can even navigate as well. And so these are brand new. They are off by default. So you will need to turn them on in Tools, Options, Text Editor. We have it for both Visual Basic and C#. And then you would just select this inheritance margin option here under Advanced. So definitely check that out. Another exciting feature is the new remove unused references command, which allows you to clean up project references and NuGet packages that have no usage. And the remove unused references command will appear in the right-click menu in Solution Explorer when you right-click on a project name or a dependencies node. And then selecting the command will open this dialog where you can decide if you want to remove them or even keep the ones as well that you don't want to remove. And what's really cool is that with this feature, like it will just cleaning up unused project references can help you save space. It'll reduce startup time of your application. It can also help make NuGet restore faster since there'll be less packages to restore. So highly requested feature, and we finally got it in. Let's see, we also added a new command. So there's this new command in town. It's called Smart Break Line, and it automatically inserts a set of braces and places the caret within those braces when using Shift-Enter as a commit character. And this works for all type declarations that require braces. So it'll work for properties, fields, object creation, expressions as well. So here, if I go ahead and type out a field and I don't add a semicolon to the end, if I just type Shift Enter, it will add those braces, starting so I can start creating a property, let's say, right? And let's say I didn't want to do that. I can just press Shift Enter again, and it will convert it back to a field and add a semicolon to the end. So definitely check out this new command. It's really, really cool. It's called Smart Break Line. What else? Yeah.
I just think there's times that, like, if I'm coding something late at night, I'm too lazy to migrate over to my mouse or something. So having a keyboard shortcut that does that for me, so I can just hang out. My keyboard is great. Yeah,
I love it. I'll show you. I started using it all the time, and I'll show you actually with this next feature too, how you can use it. Into that,
actually, we do have one question from chat asking, does cleanup unused references work for framework for .x projects?
So it doesn't work for framework projects currently. It works for .NET Core.
So it's not about whether you use package references versus NuGet.config, or what's it called? Yeah, packages.config, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Yeah.
That's not the distinction. The distinction is whether it's a .NET Core versus .NET Full Framework.
Yeah, it may also work for full framework if you use the new SDK style projects, but I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Yeah, I think it's SDK style based, so it depends on that then. Yeah.
And we have another question about references. Does it work at the solution level or only on the project level?
So it currently only works at the project level, but in Dev 17, we are working towards getting it to work for solution level. And so if you go to ak.ms/.net/Roslyn, you can see our repo, and we actually have an open issue on that. So you can just track that as soon as it gets in.
Awesome.
And Dev 17 is Visual Studio 2022.
Yes.
What we call it internally.
Yeah, sorry. We have code names for everything, and sometimes it's hard to get out of the habit. So, yep.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. Cool.
Great.
So we did add some new IntelliSense completion options as well. And so in 16.9, we added IntelliSense completion for enums. So let me just type this out. So here, if I type out empty, I'll get string.empty. And I'm going to use smart break lines. I'm going to type Shift Enter, and Leslie, check that out.
Yeah, that's my favorite usage of it because
Yeah. And so one of our open source contributors wanted to take this completion option a step further. So he went ahead and added it for cast indexers and operators. So here, let's see, let me type this out. So here, if I type, let's say, .this, notice that it'll show me this indexer, and I'll actually get the brackets for it, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's see, what else do we got?
I also can't get over just the inline property names and
yeah. They're off, the inline hence. Yeah. So whoever's watching, check those out. They're off by default, so you can go into Tools, Options, Text Editor, C# or Visual Basic Advanced to turn the inline hence on. You can also press I think it's Control F1, I want to say, to just toggle those hints on and off at any given moment. So that's on by default. So you can quickly view that.
Is it Alt F1?
Let me double check.
I think it's Alt F1.
Oh yeah, it is Alt F1.
Alt F1. Yes, you're right. Yes,
I use it all the time.
Yes, you're a fan. I'm happy about that. Cool.
Yeah, I just leave mine on. I like having them. So
yeah. Same. I like them. Awesome.
What do you call that? Like parameter display, or what is the name of that?
So they're called inline hints, and we have it for parameter names and as well as type hints. So yeah, so we have it. We added this in 16.9. So we have it for all these different options for literals, new expressions. We have type hints for variables with inferred types, lambda parameter types, implicit object creation. So tons of different configuration options there. Cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Another feature that's actually experimental currently. So we recently extended method call completion to include arguments. So here, if I type out a method call and I press tab twice, it will automatically add these values for me, the default values. And I can go ahead and use parameter info to cycle through the values. So I'm pressing the up and down arrow keys right now.
Can you zoom in a little bit in your editor, like 150?
Oh, yes. It's actually 170, but is that good?
There you go. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So here, I'll just show that. If I do that, hopefully you can see it now. So you can see here that I'm actually cycling through these default values. And then I can just press a semicolon, which will go ahead and commit this method call and add a semicolon to the end. So pretty slick.
That's
yeah,
cool.
and it is, yeah, so it is off by default. So you also have to go into tools, options, text editor, C# advanced, or maybe it's under IntelliSense, but yeah, you would have to just turn that one on too. And yeah, definitely check it out and let us know what you think. Yeah, it's under IntelliSense, tab twice to insert arguments, experimental.
So the semicolon thing, is that every time you commit from IntelliSense that it will finish the line, or is it, how does that work?
Yeah, so it works with method calls currently. So if I am inside of one and I type a semicolon, it will commit it and add that semicolon to the end.
Okay, so if the cursor is in between the parentheses in a method call and you hit semicolon, it moves you out and put the semicolon there, so you're ready to hit enter?
Yes.
Yep.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, just even getting the default values and being able to scroll through the different method definitions is really nifty. Because sometimes, you get the example they give you is not always the best. So to be able to see it written out in action just as a default is helpful sometimes. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Oh,
yeah,
somebody asked earlier with VS 2022 or Dev 17, if we've still been throwing that around, coming, are all these changes going to be incorporated into 17.0?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Of course. and even more things.
Yep.
Cool.
I think that's pretty safe to say for all the features we're going to explore today.
Yeah.
There's another question here about the method completion. Does that work for any methods, or is it only for framework methods? The semicolon trick.
It works for any method. Yeah. So, well, there's two parts to that. There's the method completion that was shown there, and then the semicolon works for any statement that you need to insert a semicolon in. So if you're in the middle of typing inside of something and you hit semicolon, it will take you to the end and add the semicolon. And those are like two separate features, but they work really nice together.
Yep.
Awesome.
And so where can you show again where to enable that feature? Maybe zoom in on that dialog.
I sure can. So
if you can use like window key plus.
Yeah, let's try that. Did that work a little?
Yep.
Ooh, okay.
There we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so this is where it would be. It's under IntelliSense and then show items from unimported. That's why insert arguments experimental. So I can't even see it on my screen. The option, it got so big. Cool. Awesome. So real quick, we also enhanced we did some edit and continue enhancements as well. So for those of you that aren't familiar with edit and continue allows you to make changes to your source code during a debugging session while you're in break mode. So instead of having to stop, recompile your entire program and restart the debugging session, you can go ahead and see those edits. And so edit and continue doesn't support every edit though. And in 16.10, we added support for editing partial classes, records, and add missing using directives. So let's go ahead and just see this in action real quick. Cool. So I have this console.writeLine statement here. And you can see at the top, I don't have a using system. So if I go ahead and add let me just go ahead and debug this test. real quick. Wait for that to load, to run.
And of course, this is an addition to the existing edit and continue that we've had in Visual Studio for a long time, right? We're making it better now.
Exactly, yeah.
I love, sometimes it feels like the list of what you can't do is longer than the list of what you can do.
Yeah. And so if I go ahead and just comment this, comment this console.writeLine statement out here, I will get this error. I'll get this red squiggle, and I have this code fix to apply this using system. And voila, the code fix was applied. The error is gone, and the system.using was added to the top. So it's pretty nifty stuff.
Love it.
Yeah. And so I also want to mention real quick that Edit and Continue also powers Hot Reload, and you can learn all about that from builds and just a bunch of blog posts online and documentation that's out there. So check that out.
My favorite upcoming feature, Hot Reload.
Yeah, I saw your keynote at Builds and you demoed it. You all demoed it. It was awesome.
It's so cool. It just saves so much time. And so we have fans of Edit and Continue. Works great in DB6.
Yeah, Edit and Continue has been around for a long time. The big thing is when we add new features and stuff, or we find gaps that we think it could be extended to, we continue to update it, especially because C# is moving very fast with new features these days.
Yeah. Oh, this is related to the question with the semicolon and all that stuff we were doing earlier with like the method completion. So what if one of the function parameters is a string and we want to enter a semicolon to the string?
So if you are inside of a string literal, which I assume is what you're talking about, I believe it should not insert, it shouldn't move and insert a semicolon at the end. It should be smart enough to know that you're inserting inside of a string literal. We do have logic for that. So if you hit a case where that doesn't work, definitely just file an issue.
Great.
Yeah. Cool. Sweet. Well, I think Andrew has now some demos real quick. So we have time, Leslie?
Yeah, we've got some time.
Okay, I'll try to be quick.
Yeah, okay.
Lightning round.
We had a lot, so.
Yeah, lightning round. Let me
Your team always comes in hacking.
I was like, do we have enough time?
Let me know once you can see my screen, because I only have one monitor, so I can't actually keep both up.
Yep. I can relate to that. I also only have one monitor. Here we go.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about source generators real quick, because we've been working really hard to make source generators pretty usable. So if you're not familiar with source generators, they're a newer feature. I believe they were shipped in 16.9 or 16.8. It's hard to keep track anymore. But basically, it's the idea that you can write a source generator that generates code that gets inserted into your library or whatever. So as this source generator, this generates this code that gets inserted into this library here as a dependency. So this Blazor memory game.model depends on that source generator, uses it, and when it builds, it generates these classes at build time. So all of this is generated code, and you can get really fancy with this. Most of this is hard coded right now, so just to showcase what's going on. Mm-hmm. And so we added a few things to make understanding source generators a little bit easier. So if you look at the analyzers node, you can see that this depends on this source generator, and you can actually expand this out and see that these are the files that were generated. These used to be mostly just text files, they still had coloring and everything, but there were some restrictions on what you could do. So we've been expanding that to treat them as much like just normal code files as possible. So if I want to do final references, now I can. And this just shows where it's all used. And this also shows that this is in the animalcard.cs. So this is the only place it's used currently. And it's listed as a miscellaneous file. So it's a good indicator that it's a miscellaneous file. It's CS, probably a source generated file. But we can, I had a breakpoint somewhere, but it doesn't really matter. So you can also just add breakpoints now. And so when you're debugging a source generator, which I can show you how to do in a second, you can have breakpoints and just debug source generators outright as if it's normal code. So this includes like, I can debug a source generator as it's generating code, and I can also debug the generated code. Really important for understanding, like if a source generator, which is a package you depend on, is causing a problem, you can kind of dig in and debug a little bit. So quickly, hopefully I can show you how to debug a source generator. I'm trying as fast as I can here. So in your source generator, you want to add this is Roslyn commit. And then in the project properties, you want to set the launch profile to the Roslyn component. You do have to have the .NET SDK installed in your Visual Studio for this to work, because it uses special Roslyn tools to do this. But once all that's running, you can just click F5 and go through your source generator as it's generating code. So what this does is it's running, this launches csc.exe, which is the C# compiler, which then hosts the source generator and runs it based on the project that it would be building. So this is actually like as if it was running through source generation for the project that we're going through. And you can just dig through and watch as everything gets added to the project and generates source.
Wow.
So these source generators, are they, this source code, is it being generated at compile time or runtime or both?
This is generated at compile time, not runtime.
Okay.
But that also includes, we have like two different compilations. If you think about it, we have what's happening in the editor as like live updates get compiled, and then your like full compilation. Both of them will run source generators. So as you're making edits in a file or whatever, you should see source generators still running in the background.
So I take it that this is supported in the newer versions of the C# compiler or the .NET compilers.
Yes.
So it works. So it doesn't matter if it's full framework or .NET Core, or.
I believe both should work as long as you're using a newer version of the compiler.
So if I set my compiler to, let's say, C#9, I'm good.
Yeah. Language version doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's just the compiler has to support it because it's all new technology. So that means like if you're updating Visual Studio, your compiler gets updated as well. And so it should, I think 16.8 was the earliest we had it, but don't quote me on that. 16.10 will definitely work though.
Excellent.
Great. That is exciting stuff.
So one other kind of cool feature we have that we added.
Before we go on, can I just ask a question? So there was a question here about, what about T4? So T4 is not supported on .NET Core. I take it here from this question. Is source generator sort of the new T4 templating? Is that what people should use instead going forward?
So I like to think of it as kind of the evolution of T4, because T4 was a templating engine. Mm-hmm. And a lot of source generator stuff is intended to be generating code up front rather than at runtime. So you can think of some of the top use cases we're thinking of are like dependency injection, where you have to, at runtime, go through a list of libraries that you knew ahead of time existed and load them in and then find dependencies, where we could just at compile time generate that up front. Mm-hmm. So you could do dependency injection all statically, which speeds up your load time tremendously on app start. So that's one of the things that like web frameworks are looking at. And then it's less of a templating engine in the sense because it's not as rich. T4 does have like templating technologies into it, whereas this is just you writing code. You could use a templating engine to generate that code and then add it in your source generator if you want to get really fancy. But it's just writing C# to write C#.
All right.
All right. Any more questions on source generators before I move on?
I think that was it.
Yeah, I think that was
okay.
Kind of
yeah, and there are some good blog posts and stuff on source generators. It's a really cool technology that we're still working hard on. One other thing we added was so if you've ever gone through and suppressed or added stuff in an editor config, it's kind of a pain. And so you looking at this file, it's kind of hard to understand. Like we add good comments, hopefully, but not always. And you never really know what's needed. So there's, extensions to help with this. I believe Mads actually helped write one. But now we've added a fancy new UI for this. So by default, when you open your editor config files, it should open in this UI, and this should show all of the all of the current configurations that you can use in an editor config, including default ones that are not set, etc. And we added all the ones from the SDK in here. These are the code style analyzers. All of this, it's super awesome. Like it's hard to explain how awesome this is, just because I have so much trouble going through editor config all the time and trying to remember what you're where.
You used to just see a huge file and
here now.
Not. Yeah, so now you can like sort the stuff and.
What's that?
Right? You can like sort all this, right? So if you.
Oh yeah, so these are all just table controls, so you can sort as you want. You can also filter, by category. We don't filter by title because that would be kind of hard to do.
Yeah.
Not very useful, but you can search. There's a search bar up here. So if I wanted to look for anything that has contains in it,
that's nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
And if you have a keen eye, you can tell that these are actually XUnit analyzers that were included. So if you include analyzers, we add them as well to this, so you can see them in your editor config if they provide configurable things.
So this is how we can have like a team or individual like coding standard, right? That's all set up in editor config, and your editor is now adhering to these rules, what analyzers to run, and all sorts of stuff in one central location.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and now there's a UI to make it way easier to understand. And then the last thing I wanted to call out, and I won't really be able to show a great demo of this, but we added a new Razor editor, which is currently experimental. So if you go to environment preview features and enable the experimental Razor editor, this is a whole new editor technology that not built from scratch, but a lot of things were replaced and redone. So this should include things that you wouldn't normally get in the Razor editor, and that includes a lot of the C# refactorings and stuff. As we add them, they just get automatically included in the new Razor editor without much work. So I highly encourage you to check this out, try it out. I don't have a good example to show today, but it's experimental, so you may hit issues. We're definitely looking for feedback as we try to enable this for everybody. But the idea is that we want editing C# in Razor to be as good as editing C# in just a normal C# file. And this gets us that much closer to it.
Yeah, that is really exciting to see. It's just so much more legible, I think, to follow through. I mean, editor config can get so huge really quickly. So
yeah.
And here's just a question. Will this work with existing .editor config files, or is it only for new ones that we tag up specifically with Visual Studio stuff? Or
oh, this works for existing ones. And when you change the UI, it edits your existing editor config.
Excellent.
Great to see. So yeah, thanks Mika and Andrew for providing just a slew of awesome tools that I can't wait to select in the tools options window now. Seriously, like every version, I get really excited about the Roslyn content. It's just like the little things that be more efficient.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I like these talks just because it reminds me of like version releases, because I get to see everything rolling out. And I'm like, oh yeah, we did ship a lot of stuff.
Like how many things did we ship? Yeah, so that's really exciting. So thanks you two.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So our next topic that we're going to pivot over to is C++. C++ has been doing a lot of cool developments, especially for 1610. So joining us up next is Erica Sweet, who is a PM on the C++ team. Hey, Erica.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So what's new in C++?
Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about our CMake support in particular, and I'm going to be talking about one big feature which was initially released in 1610, which is our CMake presets integration. So I'll start by sharing my screen real quick.
All right. For those who may not know while you're getting that set up, what is CMake?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to start with a bit of context. Also, can you see Visual Studio now? Did that work?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So for a bit of context, if you don't use CMake or you're not a C++ developer, CMake is a really popular cross-platform open source meta build system for C and C++ development that's supported natively in Visual Studio. And CMake is especially valuable for cross-platform developers because you can use the same CMake build script to build with MS Build or Unix Makefiles or Xcode or Ninja or whatever your underlying build tool of choice is. So you can maintain that single source of truth when you're building for multiple platforms. And recently, our team at Microsoft has been working really closely with Kitware, who are the creators and maintainers of CMake, to develop a new file called CMakePresets.json, which is what I have open in the IDE now. And CMakePresets.json is used to drive the CMake configure, build, and ctest invocations. It's supported by CMake and is cross-platform itself. So you can use the same CMakePresets.json file to build your project in Visual Studio from the command line on Windows, Linux, and Mac, in your CI pipeline, and in Visual Studio Code. And today I'm just going to be quickly walking through the Visual Studio integration. So in 16.10, our CMake presets integration is still in preview, so you'll have to enable it. So you can either add a CMake presets.json file to the root of your repository, and Visual Studio will automatically do the right thing, or you can enable it globally for all of your CMake projects in Tools, Options, CMake. This use CMake presets to drive CMake configure, build, and test. So with CMake presets enabled, you'll see that I now have 3 dropdowns across the menu bar instead of just 1. And I know this might be small for you, so I will read out what I'm doing. So the dropdown on the left is my active target system. And this is the system where CMake will be called to configure and build the project. So the options I see are my local Windows machine, any SSH connections that I've established by IP address, so this is a remote Linux system, and any WSL distributions that I have installed. The dropdown in the middle is my active configure preset, and so that contains all of the instructions to construct the CMake configure command line. So to quickly walk through the configure preset that I'm using, it's a pretty simple one. All I'm doing is specifying my generator, which is my underlying build tool, and in this case, I'm using Ninja. And this field maps directly to -G if you were to invoke CMake from the command line. I'm setting my build directory. I'm setting a few CMake hash variables, which maps to -D if you were to invoke CMake from the command line. And I'm also enabling developer warnings, which is the same as passing -W-dev from the command line. And we have IntelliSense for this file. So if you want to edit or create new CMake presets files, then Visual Studio will offer completion and your normal IntelliSense. All right, and finally, the drop down on the right is my active build preset, and this is the instructions to construct the build command line. And I'm not actually passing any additional arguments to CMake at build time, so I can just use the default build preset, which is the same as invoking a vanilla CMake -- build from the build directory. So no native build tool options or anything like that is being passed to CMake. So I've already generated this project, you can see in the CMake output window down here. And CMake generation is when CMake is called to write all the underlying build files so that you're ready to invoke a build. So I've already done that. So now I'm ready to build and debug a target on WSL. So this is my list of targets. And I'm ready to debug this example. Oh, it looks like I did not actually generate because I've had this session of Visual Studio open for a long time now. So
No worries, I've been there.
I might have to sit through generation again. Sorry, shouldn't leave these idle right before I demo. So while this is happening, one point that I did want to underscore is if you've used our CMake integration before 16.10, then you might have used a file called CMake settings.json, and you might be wondering how is CMake settings.json different than the CMake presets.json? And there's a few reasons. Let me start this debugging session now that we're done. Okay, so There's a couple of reasons why CMake presets is our recommended alternative. One, it's supported directly by CMake, so there's no Visual Studio magic happening when we construct the CMake configure and build command lines, and that ensures that you can reproduce the exact same build with our tools and from the command line and in your CI pipeline. So you can really have that single source of truth for your team. Another is that it's cross-platform, so you can use it on Windows or Linux and Mac. It's also supported in Visual Studio Code. So I also work on our CMake Tools extension in VS Code, where we also support this file. So you should be able to seamlessly hop between products without any additional project-specific configuration. So moving forward, it's definitely our recommended configuration file when you're using CMake. Okay, that was a mouthful.
Fantastic. I love it. So I have a question. So
yeah.
This file, this JSON file, you just have it in the is it in the root of your repo? And if it's there, Visual Studio automatically kind of just does the right thing.
Yes.
You don't have to configure anything. It just, you decided for your team, for your repo, that this is your configuration, and everyone now does the same thing.
Exactly, yeah. And the even cooler part that I didn't really have time to demo today, but there's also a companion user level file, so a CMake user presets.json that can be used to store your local developer builds. So if you just kind of want a playground environment, or you want to set a few flags that you don't want to impact the file that's checked into source control, then you can do that in your user presets file, and CMake will Visual Studio will surface the union of non-hidden configure and build presets in both CMake presets.json and CMake user presets.json. So you can pull from either of those files depending on what's checked in for your team and what is specific to you.
That's awesome.
That's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
and then
love
just
not having to do that all manually.
Yeah. And then, just to super quickly recap what's happening here in this debugging session. So I was building on WSL with CMake, and CMake was invoking Linux-specific build tools like GCC. I'm using Ninja, and now I'm debugging in Visual Studio using the front end of the Visual Studio debugger backed by GDB that's also running on WSL. So I have the same nice visual interface that you're used to when you're debugging locally on Windows. Like, I have all my variables. I can step through, step in, step out. All of that is the same, but I'm using GDB without having to use GDB from the command line and scroll up and down in my terminal and re-request information on each step. So if you like a graphical interface, it can be a more intuitive way to debug your Linux applications.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. That's really great.
Yeah. And this is as I said, it's still in preview. So this was our first release in 16.10. We had a synchronized release where this is available in VS and in VS Code. But we are continuing to add to this experience. So in Visual Studio 2022, that first release, you'll see a lot more enhancements added to this experience, because CMake presets really is the recommended method of configuring and building your project moving forward.
Good stuff. And chat seems jazzed about it too. So
cool.
So much easier to use.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, even the non-C++.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Well, if you .NET developers need to do any C++ cross-platform development, I recommend CMake for sure.
I love all the cross-platform capabilities that are coming into Visual Studio, both for C++ and .NET, and just in general. It's wonderful.
Like testing, so just across the board, just making it so much easier to hop between different platforms.
Definitely.
Great.
So
you're making people want to go back to C++ after developments like this. So that's really exciting.
It's improved a lot. Yeah.
Great.
Cool. So that was .NET. And that was C++. What else do we have in the bag for 16.10, Leslie?
All right. Well, thank you once again, Erica. And be sure to check out C++, y'all. So up next, and to close us out, we are going to talk about good old GitHub and the latest developments that we have with GitHub integration in Visual Studio. So joining us for that is Pratik Nadagoda and Taser Gopal on the VS team. Hey, y'all.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Leslie. I'm Ads. Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thanks for being here. So, what's new in GitHub land today?
Yeah. In 16.10, we've added a lot of features. It's feature packed, And we've been mostly listening to feedback on the new Git tooling in Visual Studio. We've been taking action on new features that people have wanted, old features that they have in other tools, and we've been working on adding those in Visual Studio. So let me share my screen, and I can start showing you what's there.
All right.
All right, so I have Visual Studio 1610 open, a repository eShop on containers. I have that open, and I'll start over here in the Git changes window on the bottom right. So one of the main things that folks were asking about was a sync button. We didn't include sync or synchronize in our initial iteration of the tooling because it wasn't a real Git command. It's a combination of pull and push, and it basically synchronizes your local branch with the remote branch. But people really liked it. It was a popular command. Other tools have it. So we added it back, and it's right here in the top of your Git changes window. And so I can sync from right here. You may, those who are familiar with the commands up here may notice that the pull and push buttons aren't there anymore. And so what I've done is I've removed those because I didn't want to have a clutter of 4 buttons there, but I can add them back as well. So you can now customize what buttons or shortcuts you have. Say I do like pulling without having to push sometimes. So I can add that back and then the pull buttons back here for easy access. We also have a bunch of new commands here in the overflow menu. I can work with multiple remotes if I have a repository that has multiple remotes, and I can sync with my origin and upstream. I can also work with tags over here if I have tags in my repository. And I can open my repo in the browser, in File Explorer, or in Command Prompt if I have to jump to a different location in order to work with my repo.
That is really great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I like having all those options.
We're excited about it too. Customizability was kind of the main theme of feedback we've been hearing. And so we've been working on putting those features in the Git functionality.
And thank you for bringing back the sync button. I know that a lot of people are asked for that, and I was one of them. So thank you.
One
You're
satisfied
welcome,
customer. Yeah, so like on that topic of customization and having options, there's a lot of different ways that developers just open the repos and their code files. So how is that being accounted for in the new Git integration?
Right. So there has been feedback about wanting to open repositories first, or wanting to open solutions first, and different developers have different workflows for that. And so we've added a bunch of options in our Git settings. So if you go down to Git settings, that takes you to your Git global settings. And in Git global settings, you have all the options to open repositories, open the solution if you want to, or if you don't want to load the solution, you don't have to when you're opening a repository, plus a bunch of different customizations and commands for different Git functionality in Visual Studio, such as pruning remote branches when you want to fetch, or if you want to rebase local branch when pulling. And we're adding a lot more customizations and options here. So this is where you want to look when looking to customize how you work with Git in Visual Studio.
What is that checkbox you got there for enable download of author images? Is that like little avatars from like GitHub or Azure DevOps?
Yep, that's right. When you are working on GitHub or Azure DevOps, you have little gravatar images, and so you can see those images of different users, different teammates in the commits and in the details in Visual Studio as well.
Oh,
yay!
That's wonderful.
I like it.
Yeah.
So nice little detail.
Yeah. The other part. Yeah. It's a small detail, and yeah, we are working on better support for those images. The other part here that is part of what we believe is your inner developer loop is the status bar. The status bar is always accessible. It's always visible. It's where a lot of folks kind of live for their Git functionality, and so we did a big revamp of that for 1610. So the first part of it is the branch picker. We revamped the branch picker to show your locals as well as remote branches. You can filter the list and search for different branches. and we made checking out a branch super easy with just a single click. And so you can single click to check out the branch, and you also have on right click other branch actions that you may want to do right here in the branch picker. So that's always available for you now. Folks also said that they wanted a better way to switch between different repositories. And so we added a repo picker down here with the repository name. So I can search between all the local repositories that Visual Studio recognizes on your local drive, and I can switch between those repositories. I can a single click to open them, or right click to remove them from a list if you want to trim down this list a little bit. So that repo list is now also available to you. The pencil icon takes you to Git changes, and so that one it shows the number of pending changes that you have. I've changed one file over here, so it has one button over here. And the last button is the number of unpushed commits. So if I've made any commits and those haven't been pushed up to my remote, it shows that number here. And from here, I can fetch, pull, push, and sync as well. And then as well as view my outgoing and incoming commits from here. So those are all the updates that we have for the status bar.
Awesome. I especially love the repo picker one. That one's really great. Sometimes I just open up the wrong repo and I don't want to have to navigate back over to file open and find the right one. So
right.
Cool to see all the local ones in one spot.
And another favorite little tip I got is for those commands, pull, push, and sync. They're commands like any other command in Visual Studio, right? You can assign a keyboard shortcut to it if you want to, and like not even like and have your own keyboard shortcut and put it wherever you want. Man, it's just a command like any other.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And
so,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay. I was going to say, I do have one question from chat regarding Azure DevOps and whether there are plans to provide more integration with the DevOps space in addition to Git.
Yeah, so that's also something that we're working on right now, and bringing in Azure DevOps work items and publishing repos, as well as GitHub issues. Those are now functionality that we're starting to build and starting to design in the new Git experience, and so we'll definitely have that functionality there as well. That's going to come in VS 2022.
Awesome. Exciting stuff. So what else you got for us?
Yeah, Taysir has a bunch of things to show, so I'll hand off to Taysir.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Pratik. Yes. This release of Visual Studio has lots of updates when it comes to Git enhancements and Git tooling. And so as you can see here in my screen, I'm focusing on the Git repository window. And on the left-hand side, I have my local branches, but I also see remotes. So this is actually the same repo that Pratik has been showing.
Can you zoom in? Sorry, can you zoom in? We can better get a look.
Sure. What is the shortcut, Mads?
Windows key and then plus. Sometimes it has to think about it.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a shortcut for that. That's kind of cool.
Oh yeah. All right, let's just continue.
I think it's here.
You might not want to.
Oh.
There we go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, my machine is very, very slow now, but yeah. So as you can see here, I have my local branches. I have remotes. This is the same repo that Pratik has been talking about and using. And so you can look at the original fork, and I have my origin as well. So all that is in the Git repo window here. If I can zoom out. Yeah, so all that is in here. One thing that we have enhanced in this version of Visual Studio is actually the ability to fetch, pull, and push within the Git repo window. And so sometimes you don't have the Git changes window available. Some users would like to open the Git repository in a separate window. So it was very, very important for us to introduce these shortcuts here. So if I want, I can fetch this branch that I'm on here. So I just clicked on fetch, You can see the status indicator on the lower hand side here. And, Visual Studio has been, fetching, that branch for me. And so it says here there are no incoming commits, which is great in that case. And
come on, you can do it.
Come on.
Your machine is busy with the video stream here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear the fan on my laptop is also very active.
Yep. Anytime I demo while also on Teams or something, it's just like I feel like my computer's going to explode or something.
Well, there's something about this thing in the browser. It takes up a lot of CPU.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it does. Yeah, and so in this case, actually, like my machine detected that there are 2 incoming commits. Actually, Pratik looks like he has been making some changes, and I can go ahead and pull them if I want. But what's really cool about this version of Visual Studio is if I double click on any one of the commits, we get the embedded commit details and the diff experience. And so without having to leave my Git repository window, I get all of that here. And so what's really cool about that is, I can navigate to different commits, and those parts will update. I'll be able to look at different commits without leaving my window here. I can, look at different changes as well. And I get the ability to, configure how my embedded diff would look and function. So I have an inline embedded diff in this case, but I can choose to use the side-by-side version if I want. And this is really great if I'm looking for a specific change or if I'm trying to figure out, what my team has been working on. In this case, I can look at what Pratik has been introducing into that branch very quickly at the same place. But once I know that this is the commit that I would like to focus on, then I can actually open this commit in a separate tab by clicking this open a new tab button here. What that would do is actually opens that commit detail in a separate tab. The feedback we got from users here is that sometimes users would like to keep some commits on the side. Other users wanted, more screen real estate to focus on specific commits. And so that this functionality allows for that here. What's also great about this is that now users can detach, tabs and open commit details in separate screens or monitors as well, which is really great for those who are using multiple screens and multiple monitors. Yeah, so this is a quick demo of some of the updates that we have been working on and introducing in the Git repository window.
This is awesome.
So cool to see how much got added in between 16.9 and 16.10.
A lot.
Yeah,
you've been busy.
Yeah.
What I really think is what really fascinates me about the Git repo window is that it's becoming this sort of management place where I can manage my repo. I can take deep dives into what's going on, and it's something you can lose yourself in this particular tool window for a long time if you really want to get into the detail
elsewhere. Yeah. And on that topic, as we work to just keep the singular destination and buff up both the inner loop and the outer loop experiences, what about pull requests and code reviews? Is there a game plan for that moving forward?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So so for example, I told you earlier that I have 2 remotes, and I added so we have forked this repo and we are working on it, and that's how we are planning to contribute back to the original fork. And so you can see here under my remotes, I have the fork and then the origin, right? And so if I expand the fork, I can see all of the branches that are on that fork. And this allows me to right-click on any one of those branches to fetch the latest updates, and then even merge those latest updates into the branches that we are working on. And once I'm ready to contribute my updates, I can very quickly create a pull request right from there. So this is great for doing that. But let's say I'm not in the Git repository window. You mentioned the inner loop, right? So sometimes you're away, you're coding, you might or might not have the Git changes window open. And so we have also introduced shortcuts to creating and viewing the, your pull requests on the Git top level menu. And so if you click Git, and there's a GitHub there, and then you have new pull request and view pull requests there. So those two buttons are linked to your GitHub repository. And if you are an Azure DevOps user, you'll get an Azure DevOps instead of GitHub, and then you'll be able to do the same actions there.
Very cool. I saw someone, I don't know if it was online or if it was someone working on the Visual Studio team, using the Git repo window on a separate monitor, because it's, it can take the full screen. It's like almost like its own app for managing that side of your development process. And then, coding on the one monitor and managing Git repo on the other. I thought that was kind of clever.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The flexibility here is tremendous. So you can detach, the Git repository window like you are seeing here. You can have it on a separate monitor. Yeah, that is, absolutely. And you can benefit from all the screen real estate you have.
Exactly. And that goes, and that's not just true for the Git repos window, right? That works for every single tool window in Visual Studio. You can attach, put on a different monitor, really optimize your work surface.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Yeah, and we have one question from chat. Is Visual Studio going to get support for Git work trees?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think if you have your work trees, they'll show in your Git repo list today. But we are starting to invest more in advanced scenarios. So, for example, multi-repo support, Git submodules, work trees are in our roadmap, and so we'll get to those advanced scenarios in Visual Studio 2020.
Great.
2022.
Oh, 2022.
Yeah. 2022. Yes. Good hype. And also, what about interactive commits? Does this support it?
That's a great question. Actually, this is one of the first new features that we will introduce in Visual Studio 2022. It might not come in 17.0. It might be, we'll see like how far we'll be able to get, but we are thinking that it possibly going to be a part of 17.0 or 0.1 right now. But yes, the ability to stage specific lines of code from the editor, that is something that we are actively working on, and we are making progress there.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, yeah, it really is exciting just to see how much has been added just between two versions. So I'm looking forward to 2022, which I'm sure is just going to be like a smorgasbord.
Yes, work is in progress, and we're actively enhancing the Git tooling in Visual Studio.
Great. Yeah,
Stay tuned.
Looking forward to it. Yep, stay tuned, y'all. So thank you, Taser and Pratik. Can't wait to see what's coming up next.
Yep, good stuff.
Thank you.
Take a break. Sweet. All right, so that concludes our episode for the day. But your homework, if you haven't done it already, is to hit update on the Visual Studio installer and try out the new 16.10 features and share your feedback. We're all ears. Seriously, our feedback really helps us improve the product, hence stuff like the GitHub updates or the C++ CMake experience and all the different Roslyn tweaks. It's really cool to see. And yeah, also just be sure to download Visual Studio if you haven't downloaded Visual Studio. And again, share your feedback as well. Yeah. And also be sure, if you want to learn more about what's new in 16.10, we obviously didn't cover everything here, that we have the Visual Studio blog that has a full breakdown of everything in 16.10 that you should check out. And we also have a blog post on CMake presets that Erica was talking about earlier as well. I meant to plug it there, but I'm plugging it here. So if you're interested, feel free to go there as well. And yeah, thank y'all so much for coming. We hope to definitely do this again for future updates, obviously. And yeah, Matt, do you have anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you to everyone watching this. And as Leslie says, go check out 16.10 and let us know what you think. reach out on YouTube, Twitter, developer community, send us feedback, all the stuff, right? And enjoy the product.
Yep. So until next time, happy coding.